It's another edition. Welcome, friends, of Inside Coverage here on Yahoo. The how and the why, any and everything you need to know about the National Football League. Thanks for being here from the home office in Southern California. My name is Andrew Siciliano. I promise you that I love football. I think my friends, our Yahoo senior writers, I think they love football as well. Let's poll the room. Jori, Epstein, do you love football?
I love working in football and the craft of it, but yes.
Okay. Wow. Frank Schwab, do you love football?
That? I love football. Love it. Love it, Ed.
Okay.
Unconditionally.
By the way, both of you, there's nothing wrong with either of your answers. Like, you're both right in your own charming and endearing way. Like, we all love football to a degree. The reason I ask, and you may know why I ask, you're nodding, is watching at noon Eastern, 9 Pacific today, the introductory press conference in East Rutherford for the Giants, in which Joe Schoen somewhat awkwardly and, I don't know, kind of stumbled through his introduction of the new head coach, John Harbaugh. The one impression you get from John Harbaugh is, gosh darn it, he loves football.
To me, the number one thing is we have to have guys that love football. I mean, you just have to. It's football. What are we here for? You know, what do we do? What is this building for? It's for football. You know, this is a football team. And we need guys that love everything about football. They love the games. They love the practices. They love the weightlifting. They love the meetings. They love the dining hall. You know, they love every part of football, man. And if you love football, guys, if you love football, you're going to want to be here. You're going to want to drive in that parking lot every single day. You're going to want to walk through those doors. You want to walk up in those halls. You're going to want to get in front of that tape and watch tape every single day because you're going to be around a bunch of guys that love what you love. They love football because that's what we're going to be doing, football, all the time.
We'll be doing football, he would later say. That's an exact quote. Jori, we'll be doing football. That's the plan. What were your takeaways from the high-energy John Harbaugh introduction today?
Yeah, I would say that's definitely a better plan than not doing football if you're going to be the
We'll
head coach
be
of
doing
not
football.
Just the Giants, but as John Harbaugh said, the New York Football Giants. And you could tell the level of respect he has for the franchise's history. I think this is a guy who, I mean, he's used to coaching Lamar Jackson, and so you want to have some baseline level of talent at quarterback and hope at quarterback, even if you're not going to have a two-time MVP. And Jackson Dart gave him that. So at the quarterback position, he felt confident. He looked at the roster. Both he and his father, Jack, watched tape in case anyone was wondering. The Harbaugh family is involved, and he made sure to tell Jim, hey, don't worry, we're in the NFC. You're fine in the AFC. Maybe they'll see each other in a Super Bowl yet again. And I think this is also someone who he knew he had leverage. He knew this is where he wanted to be, and he used his leverage to get the responsibilities he wanted.
Yeah, we'll unpack that in a second. We have both his comments and Joe Schoen's comments. Absolutely. That's coming up. Frank, what about doing football?
Yeah, I wonder he's going to try to find only people who like meetings. He didn't mention training camp. I guarantee you there's going to be some guys on his roster who don't like that either. But yeah, this is John Harbaugh. He commands the room, and good for him. Like, quote unquote, winning a press conference. I think is really, really dumb. But
absolutely,
he does that. He's great. And by the way, why do we call them the New York Football Giants anyway? The New York Baseball Giants moved in 1958 to San Francisco. Like, what are we doing?
Well, why is it's old people talk. It's old people talk. John Harbaugh's older. My father, I don't remember the New York Baseball Giants clearly, but my father is 80. He would always refer to them as the New York Football Giants. So I think it's kind of men of a certain age. People of a certain age, it's kind of ingrained, but it is very much old people talk. You don't hear a teenager on TikTok describe them as the New York Football Giants anymore, do you? Frank, TikTok.
That's all over my TikTok feed, Andrew. Yeah, it's just
all over your TikTok.
New York Football Giants, New York Football Giants. I can't get away from it. It's crazy.
I did a 30-minute deep dive last night sitting in the car. I wasn't driving, on the Philadelphia Experiment. I saw that movie in the 80s as well. But anyway, I digress. It reminded me a little bit. Do you remember? I can't remember what the commercial is, but it ran all season, where Meghan Trainor, as in the singer, right, is there with Patrick Mahomes. And she goes, "This is Patrick, everybody. He does football." Remember that?
Very good. Yes,
No?
yes. I
Okay.
saw it 18 million
I think
times
Frank's
during
seen
prime
it
time
at
games.
Buffalo Wild Wings at time or five.
A few times. Just a little bit.
I'm all for John Harbaugh, big fan, and the Giants win the offseason. If that means anything to you, they got John Harbaugh. And I do think that for their fan base, who's been through a lot, and if I had $1 for every time a Giants reporter or a caller on sports radio the last couple of days said, oh, we had Pat Shurmur, and we had Ben McAdoo, and we had Brian Daboll, and they listed all the coaches that they didn't like and for all intents and purposes didn't do the job, and now we have John Harbaugh. So I'm happy for them, and they can celebrate the players. Many of them were in the room today, whether it's Jackson Dart or Jameis Winston, who got a call out. Like, all of that was a feel good. But I also think, and know John Harbaugh a little bit, that a lot of that energy and that positivity was to steer clear of the, hey, what took so long? Why did this thing almost fall apart over the weekend? And why was it such a big deal to not answer to Joe Schoen, that a lot of your fan base thinks should be out, not answer to the GM, and hold up the negotiations, seemingly after the Giants made everyone think through back channels that this thing was done, so that you could answer instead to ownership. John Harbaugh was asked about that. He said, it's no big deal. Here's what Joe Schoen had to say.
And I'm not worried about that. Everywhere I've been in the league for 26 years. So everywhere I've been, the head coach and general manager work together. That's the only way it's going to work. And get on the same page, go through the process. Again, we've done it everywhere I've been. So I'm not worried about it. Like you said, that's just something on a piece of paper. It doesn't matter. We need to work together, and we're going to come to the final conclusion. And it's always going to be about what's best for the New York Giants. So I have no problem with that. And I'm looking forward to working with him.
Final say really doesn't matter. I don't believe you. Final say always does matter. Now, all coaches, GMs, ownership in these situations say, hey, we're going to be collaborative and we're going to make the decisions together. Well, who has the final say? Oh, it doesn't matter. In the end, ownership always generally has the final say. They write the checks, right? They are always technically, in a weird way, in charge. I also thought, Jori, that the way Harbaugh described Joe Schoen, oh, we're going to be fine. He knows all the coaches. He knows all the players. I mean, he knows all the scouts. Yeah, that's his job. He's the GM. It was a lot of, I'm just going to avoid the question and be all energy here. What'd you think?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, John Harbaugh was definitely kissing Joe Schoen's butt publicly so that he didn't look like he had just kind of taken some of the power from him. It was a lot of in his introductory statement, Joe, thanks. It was so great meeting with you. And when he was asked about him really going after Joe, real football guy, which as we know, football guy doing football is exactly what John Harbaugh wants. But to me, I think that, look, John Harbaugh had the leverage to get this ability or this amount of power, and he got it. It makes perfect sense. Joe Schoen still has some degree of authority because, one, he's the GM, but his authority right now, despite the record, comes from finding Jackson Dart. Really, as we've talked about, if you find a quarterback in this league, you get to keep your job for a lot longer than if you find every other piece, but not a quarterback. Quarterback, far and away, is the most important piece for the team. And if you hit on one, you get to keep your job. So if you take that and you say, all right, but John Harbaugh's coming in and he's won a Super Bowl and he had a long track record of success in Baltimore. And I mean, I don't know if you'd say he found Lamar, but he definitely helped bring in Lamar while he was the coach. Even if he wasn't the GM, he comes to the table with that. They all were trying to convince everyone that this is not a big deal, which makes everyone pause. We should not believe that it's not a big deal, because if it wasn't a big deal, you guys wouldn't be so needing to say, hey, it's not a big deal. There's a defensiveness about it. But what I will say I agree with is that as long as they're winning, it's less of a big deal, because if they're winning and they're both there, then okay, maybe someone wants a little bit of a bigger defensive tackle and someone else wants someone who's a little more quick on his feet. Yes, there might be some of that, but really where it comes down to it is if John Harbaugh is not reporting to Joe Schoen and they start having trouble, I mean, Joe Schoen's going to be the fall guy. But Joe Schoen will be the fall guy first anyway, most likely, because he hasn't won a Super Bowl and he's been there longer. But he had to now go out and find the coach, and he landed it. So if you're Joe Schoen and you can get John Harbaugh, that's a huge win. It's the best chance at you succeeding in your job. You should do that. So I don't think that there's going to be all this hey, they disagree on a ton of things and John Harbaugh gets this guy. The last thing I think that we should note is there were some of the local Giants reporters who were saying that as of now, no one from the Ravens front office was expected to come over, even if some coaches were. And I think that would be very telling if it continues to bear out once they have the staff in place, because where you see more of a questioning is like when Sean Payton went to Denver. He's trying to take some of the front office guys with him from New Orleans who he respected. There was this expectation that, hey, if it doesn't go well, George Payton will be replaced by one of Sean's guys. If Harbaugh doesn't bring one of his guys, then Joe Schoen should have a little bit more of a runway to do what he wants. But we might see John Harbaugh have more of his fingerprints in how he builds this team, the same way that Mike Vrabel coming into a New England team where Elliott Wolf was already general manager and Drake May was already quarterback. Mike Vrabel still got a lot of guys he used to work with and who play in his style. But I don't know that I view that as undermining Elliott Wolf so much as augmenting Elliott Wolf.
Yeah, this is really Exhibit A why I like the model of just clear it out. Bring in a new head coach and GM at the same time. We've seen bad organizations like the Titans do it one after another. 1 year as a head coach, 1 year as a GM, 1 year as a head coach. It just is. It makes the whole situation awkward. It can be worked out. Broncos, great example, like you brought up. The Patriots are a great example. But now this whole situation just seems awkward in New York, doesn't it? Like everybody knows that Joe Schoen basically didn't get demoted per se, but had a lot of power taken away from him by a coach who had the leverage to come in and pull this power play, who has a lot more skins on the wall, to use a John Fox term, than he does. And Joe Schoen was already on the hot seat, and the Giants keeping him around was just kind of weird anyway. It's like, why do you get to stay? Well, Brian Daboll left. Yeah, I guess Jackson Dart. But I think the whole situation is just a little toxic. Maybe that won't play out that way. Winning cures everything. If they win 12 games this year, nobody's going to remember this. But I think this is just why teams are going toward, not in this coaching cycle, but in the past few years, going toward that model of let's get rid of it all, start with a new GM, start with a new head coach. We have some synergy there, and they're on the same page.
Yeah, the odd thing is that 8 of the 10 openings, and there were 10, obviously we're down to 6 now, 8 of the 10 kept the GM. The only 2 that did not were Atlanta and Miami. Miami went GM first, and then GM brought a head coach from the building that he had just left in Green Bay. John Eric Sullivan brought in his head coach, Jeff Hafley. That news got out during a national championship game in Miami last night. I don't know if that was the best timing for the Dolphins to make the big splash, or maybe it was perfect timing because he is not the biggest name. And some fans there wanted Don Shula's grandson, Chris Shula, to take the job or make some kind of bigger splash. Either way, Dolphins generally don't make that big of a splash, by the way. Like if you're driving down the PCH and you go, oh, look, Dolphins, they're not making that big of a splash, but that's a different issue. And then in Atlanta, Matt Ryan comes in as the president of football because he too loves football, and they go head coach, and now they're going to work out the GM, someone in between president of football and new head coach, Kevin Stefanski. Ryan Cowden did come with, obviously, Mike Vrabel last year had been with him in Tennessee. He lost a power struggle there when they brought in a new GM, but it worked out, as Jori pointed out, in New England. It worked out as well. If in Denver, if you had told any of us that George Payton would make it beyond 1 year, regardless of what you thought of George Payton, with Sean Payton, I think most of us would have shaken our heads. Jori's right. The resounding opinion around the NFL was, oh yeah, Sean Payton's going to get there in a year. George Payton's going to be out, if even it takes that long, and then he's going to bring in his own guy. Let's transition to Buffalo, because that is what is happening in Buffalo. Again, it's the GM stays and the coach leaves. On the surface, and Jori, you weren't part of the conversation, Frank was, C-Rob was in the center square yesterday. On the surface, I think we all agreed we weren't too stunned that Sean McDermott was fired. Like if Brandon Cooks catches that ball, is it different? Maybe, at least for another week. If they make it to the Super Bowl, does McDermott keep his job? Probably. Was this his best team? Not at all. You could argue it was one of his better coaching jobs because this team was talent deficient, I think, in some notable areas. And he made that point known both subtly and not subtly during the season. You could see him seething on the podium when the whole Darius Slay, Jamarcus Ingram thing happened, and they lost a key part of their back end, at least a depth piece and a special teams piece on their back end, when Darius Slay decided, yeah, I don't want to get there. And so the tension between Beane and McDermott was certainly palpable, and it is not that much of a surprise. I didn't look at it this way until I read a column in The Athletic. And this way, meaning I I think in retrospect, Sean McDermott deserved a little bit more of a send-off than a press release with a typo in the first sentence yesterday. Kevin Stefanski got videos and Instagram posts and thank you, coach. John Harbaugh, Mike Tomlin with far longer tenure, 3 times the tenure in Baltimore and Pittsburgh than Stefanski had in Cleveland, also got big send-offs. Sean McDermott, after 9 years and nearly 100 wins and 7 consecutive trips to the postseason and a trip to the postseason before Josh Allen or Brandon Beane even got there, got a press release. Now, mid-afternoon today, there was, the thank you, coach graphic, okay, on Twitter and Instagram. So there are the flowers more than 24 hours later. Buffalo is different in that it is such a tight-knit community. Bills Mafia runs deep. It is now an international brand, but it's a very small-town feel. And say what you want about Sean McDermott, the football coach, he's a hell of a good man who has battled through a lot, has stewarded this team through Damar Hamlin dying on the field, through a lot of other emotional roller coaster moments in that town, a close-knit town over the years. And I think the Bills lost the moment yesterday. And I think, Jori, you go first here. I think Sean McDermott deserved better.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because the question would be, is this on the Pegulas or is it on the team? I think that you could say, hey, Terry Pegula and Pegula family, Kim Pegula, if you're going to do this, you should have a plan in place. I think oftentimes the owner's not involved with whether a Twitter video is made or whether someone's putting together a compilation of the greatest moments, and also if they are, in what speed are they doing it. Like you were saying, oh, look at what the Ravens did for John Harbaugh compared to what the Bills have done so far for Sean McDermott. But I've heard other opinions that it kind of felt like the way John Harbaugh was fired was so sudden that, yes, they eventually got to the statements put out. And we know that John Harbaugh had his great smiley face emoji in his statement about leaving. But I do think that wasn't an immediate thing either. And I think it's kind of the reality that as much as we want to put clean bows on everything, especially if a coach has been there for a while, it's not how this business works. And I'm not sure that I feel so different if there's a social media post. To me, the difference is, do they get to tell the people in their own building goodbye? Yes, I get that the fan bases matter and that the national narrative matters, and you could talk about the typo in the statement and who was going off of that, and were they just kind of like rushing or panicking about this Sean McDermott firing and not totally prepared. But to me, it's more like, okay, clearly Mike Tomlin went out on his own terms. He told his players, he told his coaches, and I think it would have been reasonable to let John Harbaugh and Sean McDermott do the same. I'm less concerned about, and I would even say, even if the players aren't in the building anymore, allow the coach, if they want to send a text to them. That to me matters more than if there is a public send-off post, because I kind of feel like that's a little bit of lip service anyway.
Yeah, I totally agree. I honestly don't care about the whole social media. Did you do enough to thank the guy you just fired after a playoff loss? Like, whatever. And there are some guys, Tomlin, Harbaugh, but those spots in the parking lot are kind of reserved for the championship guys, right? Like, hey, we're going to bring you back and put you in the Ring of Fame in a few years. Sean McDermott had a nice run, nothing against him, but what are we going to remember about the Sean McDermott era with the Bills? Not much. We'll maybe remember that he was one of the coaches, didn't get Josh Allen to a Super Bowl if he never gets there. But yeah, I think it's.
But you're talking to your fan base. Like I think those people do remember him fondly.
I don't think they do. I'm trying to be as honest as I can and not be political here. I think the Buffalo Bills fan base is like, see you later, Sean. Let's get to a Super Bowl because you failed us. I think they're okay with him. They're like, oh yeah, he did all right. He got.
I think the Bills fans
the Packers fan base is doing to Matt LaFleur right now. If you don't win Super Bowls, right. I don't think you don't get inspirational videos on your way out the door. You're like, hey, thanks, Sean. Like, that's great. What they posted today was the picture. Hey, thank you, Sean. All right, cool. You can check that box. That's all they're doing. They just fired the guy. It's a cutthroat business. It's a cold-hearted business.
You're both right. The social media aspect, we're overblowing and we're putting too much significance.
Yeah. I think there is a way to fire a guy with being classy, like Jori said.
All coaches are hired to be fired. Everybody knows that. I just think that for Bills Mafia, I'm not trying to say they have the best fans in the world. Every team says we have the best fans in the world. I do think that in that kind of tight-knit community, the way you treat people does mean something. And I don't know. I think they kind of gave him the cold shoulder yesterday to a degree. Whether or not they all think that way, I don't know. Whether or not they're excited about the prospect of a new head coach and been frustrated with him, I have no doubt that they are. But that doesn't mean that they can't step back and understand the humanity in all of this. Like we all talk about, we all try to convey this to the fans, that there is a human element to all of this, right? There is a man behind the avatar, whether you're a coach or whether you're a player. You're not just the head on the bottom of the screen there where they put your stats, how many games you won or lost next to the picture of your face that is undoubtedly 10 years old, the photo. You don't look like that anymore because this job ages all of us. So I do think that there's a human element to it where maybe the moment was missed. It's not the end of the world. Sean McDermott will survive in advance and he will coach somewhere else. And the Bills will find another coach, and he will immediately get a fresh start, and he too will be judged on wins and losses, and you'll get behind the energy of the new head coach, and change can be a good thing. I don't know. Just me. I keep cutting you both off. Jori, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's interesting philosophically because you guys both know I'm very human first and very empathetic, but I also think that to me, a firing is like a breakup. And I think I always tell this to my friends when they're going through a breakup. You can't apply the same morals and philosophies to a breakup that you would normally in terms of what's kind. So like continuing to be like, oh, well, I want to be there for that person when I'm not going to be in a relationship with them. Actually, the nicest thing you can do and the most moral thing, even though it doesn't feel good in the moment, is to let that person go find the person who will be there for them because you're not going to be there for them anymore. And I think you almost kind of have to like rid yourself of the expectations of what feels right in a normal moment. And so to me, there's kind of this element of they're not going to be there for Sean McDermott anymore. To me, what they say on the way out is less important to me. It's more about, hey, let him go do it. Don't drag it out a week. And I would say that there is a point at which, what is that facial expression?
I was getting out of the picture because I was hiding because I've broken every rule there to my detriment. I was just hiding because, Jori, you sound like my therapist there and I don't listen. So keep going. That was all. I was just saying you're totally right and I have blown it. Yeah. Let me text my ex right now while you're doing this, actually.
Morality independent of context. I had a great quote I once read that really stuck with me. Morality independent of context is not actually moral. Like you have to think about the specific person and the sensitivity. Okay, I'm done being your therapist. But I think that at some point, breakups,
oh, no, my therapist agrees with you.
Yeah. There's no good way to do this. And so we have to not accept it. The last thing I'll say is that what I do believe is there's a wrong way to do it. One of which is when we were waiting, I think it was back in 2019 or at the end of the 2019 season for the Cowboys to make a decision on Jason Garrett. And I kept being like, when is this going to happen? For 5 days, we just kept not know. Actually, it was more than that because it was the following week during the wild card round that the news finally came down, I believe. And I made this joke of the Cowboys are so, how can we make money off everything, that they're going to end up sponsoring the announcement of Jason Garrett being fired. And no doubt, I could find you the receipts. I should have brought it to this show. It was a news post link on Twitter, Jason Garrett firing presented by LG, Life's Good. And I was like, I could not make this up if I tried. I thought it would be some of their partners, but that. If the Bills had done that, I would be like, come on now. But the Bills didn't do that.
No. To be clear, my therapist did not tell me to break up years ago, but my years ago is in the figurative sense. But yes, I mean, there is the attitude that, as you said, you're doing them a favor. The ex, that is, and in this case, the ex-coach. No, I'm not there. We're moving on. And maybe years from now, time to circle back, still have deep affection, right? We're all good. But in the immediate thereafter, it should be a clean break. I have not subscribed to that, generally speaking, over the years, sometimes to my detriment. But yeah, so there's that. I think I
just think instead of one more thing from now on, we should do Jori's relationship corner for the last 3 minutes of the show. That was incredible. That was fantastic. That was the best thing we've talked about all season. My goodness, Jori. And once again,
there's also
you are way above the emotional intelligence.
You're so sweet. That's except I don't love football enough for John Harbaugh. I just know.
Yeah, you don't love football, but you love life. Okay, I'm sitting here I do love
this
life.
Is Patrick, guys. He does football. I had another friend once tell me, if it's inevitable, make it immediate. And maybe that was what the Bills were. Maybe that's what the Bills were thinking. Hey, we know this isn't it, so let's go. And that's what a lot of teams, whether it's for a coach or a quarterback, you have to make that decision. Like in Houston, with CJ, I think CJ can still be the guy. But hey, if you know that he isn't, time to move on. Okay. In Cleveland, we could dissect the Deshaun Watson thing 1,000 times. The Browns decided we're not going to win a championship with Baker. Time to move on. You could question the method and everything they did after that, but they made that decision, right? Sean McVay made the decision with Jared Goff, even though he took us to a Super Bowl. I don't think he's the guy. So we're going to move on and we're going to do something dramatic. And if it's inevitable, make it immediate. And that's what the Bills decided to do, even though one could make the argument that this was one of his better, not his worst coaching seasons, considering the hand that was dealt. However, the little subtle jabs and comments on the podium and in interviews the last year saying that maybe this isn't our best team, that rings through and people hear it. People that put that team together don't like to hear it. Coming up, Robert Saleh and Liam Cohen are in the same division. Isn't that fun? We'll tell you about the Titans head coaching search, and the Dolphins have found one as well. That's next on Inside Coverage. It's Inside Coverage on Yahoo. Andrew Siciliano, relationship expert Jori Epstein, and NFL senior writer Frank Schwab for Yahoo. Jori's also, NFL writer senior here on Yahoo. Not senior, she's the junior here, thankfully. Frank and I are just a couple old men. But regardless, while we were all watching college football last night, 2 NFL head coaching jobs got wrapped up. So we're down to 6 now. The Dolphins are going with Jeff Hafley. Get to that in a second. The Titans are going with Robert Saleh. So a year after he gets fired from the Jets, he goes back to San Francisco, does a year in Kyle Shanahan rehab, and with a banged-up defense, all the major pieces injured, Bosa and Warner and Williams, all of them hurt, turns that 49er defense around. Wasn't the only reason they made a playoff run, but certainly a huge part of it. And now he is taking over the Tennessee Titans. He is taking over a team that didn't win a lot of games last year, but does have a very promising young quarterback, Cam Ward, taken number 1 overall a year ago. Robert Saleh is going to be 47 by the time we play the Super Bowl in a couple of weeks. As Jets head coach, he was 20-36. His first season as Jets head coach, Jori, he had the worst defense in the NFL. Worst scoring defense, worst total defense. But after that, he had the number 1 total defense in the NFL. So it was a 1-year rebuild, at least on that side of the ball. But he was able to rebuild it, and he got that defense humming. The question is, how does he handle the offensive side of the ball? Because they are not devoid of playmakers, right? They found Alec Iomanner and Chimere Dike and Gunnar Helm. They have some pieces, but they are lacking, truly, in explosive playmakers. Also, they got to figure out who's calling plays, because last year they had 3 different play callers.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this is interesting because Saleh, like you said, had the worst defense the first year he was with the Jets, and then had a top 5 defense each of the 3 following seasons, the third season being when he got fired in the middle of the year, and the defense got worse from there and was terrible this year after he left, including 0 interceptions. And so I think that Robert Saleh has not only shown he's a great defensive mind, but also has a great ability to motivate people, even if the other side of the ball is not able to do it. And then this year in San Francisco, we saw that despite a defense losing Fred Warner and Nick Bosa and the first round pick, Mikael Williams, that they were still playing at such a high level and beating teams that it seemed like they shouldn't be able to beat. And so I think we should not have questions. The offense is really interesting because I have a clear hope for who he will pick, and I'm curious if you guys like the fit or not. And that would be Mike McDaniel, who pulled out of the head coaching search for the Browns while we were on this podcast recording, and he's still interviewing for other positions. I mean, he's got the Chargers as one of his offensive coordinator possibilities. abilities. The Lions have already filled their position with Drew Petzing from Arizona previously, so it's not going to be there. But to me, when I look at it, I say Mike McDaniel, what he did with that offense with Tua, I do think it's really interesting, but do you think it best fits Cam Ward's skill set? That's really the question that it comes down to me, because Mike McDaniel and Robert Saleh worked together in San Francisco. They've got a background. I think their personalities complement nicely with Robert Saleh's intensity and Mike McDaniel being like a little more cerebral. Not that they both can't be each, but Mike McDaniel's personality is so laid back that having some degree of fire on the other side, I do think is good. The question is, and I keep talking to people in the league about this, when you have these dual threat quarterbacks who excel at making plays out of structure, there are some in the league who don't believe the Shanahan and McVay system are best fitted for those quarterbacks or best suited for those quarterbacks, because they kind of feel like it's such a timing and in the pocket predicated offense that it really wouldn't be maximizing the out of structure ability, and the out of structure plays might actually get you out of sync with what you want to be doing. So I'm curious, do you guys think Mike McDaniel and Cam Ward would be a good fit together?
I do think it. I think it could work. I mean, just because I have such respect for Mike McDaniel, just as an offensive mind, that he would figure it out. But I agree with you. Yes, the Shanahan, look, there's a reason that Brock Purdy succeeded and Trey Lance didn't. Many reasons, I guess. But one of them is Shanahan wants a guy who's going to run the offense on time. And Mike McDaniel's similar as far as wanting that type of quarterback who's going to run the offense, timing, getting the ball out on time. We'll see if Cam Ward can adapt to that, because he's going to have to. But Mike McDaniel's going to have to adapt to Cam Ward too. My only issue with pretty much anybody they hire, because you hired a defensive coach in Robert Saleh, who I thought was a great candidate because, he coached through the Jet situation, which if you could coach through that, anything's going to be an upgrade over that. And then he has leadership skills, obviously great defensive coach and all that. For this specific situation, though, I wonder, because if Mike McDaniel has a good season, Cam Ward does the Drake May leap in his second year or something, Mike McDaniel's going to be head coach right after that. And now you're hiring another offensive coordinator. If that guy does well, he's going to get another job like Liam Cohen did after the Buccaneers. And you're hiring another offensive coordinator, and you're never getting that continuity. I know Caleb Williams' main offensive coach for the rest of his career, at least the foreseeable future, is going to be Ben Johnson. I don't know who the Cam Ward's offensive coach is going to be in 2027 if the guy in 2026 succeeds. That's the only problem I had with hiring a defensive coach. Otherwise, so I really, really like Saleh. But yes, getting the coordinator hire correct is paramount right now. They need to get that right so you could take Cam Ward to the next level.
Jori.
I think it's worth noting, Frank, that this is one of the brilliances of how Mike Vrabel's staff was assembled, because even though he is a defensive head coach, he got Josh McDaniels, who had already tried and not succeeded as a head coach. And so there is not a concern that Josh McDaniels is going to leave to become a head coach, that teams are going to want him. And he was happy to be in this position. So when you can get the guys whose acumen is enough to get them consideration for a head coach, but they're no longer a threat of leaving, a flight risk, that's actually, I think, what they should be looking for.
Yeah, and there's the dilemma, right? Because anyone who's any good is, if they do well for you, their phone's going to ring again. And Mike McDaniel has also interviewed for the Ravens head coaching job and the Raiders head coaching job, the Ravens and the Raiders, and you would have to think that he's still at least a candidate and still under consideration for both of those jobs. He was in South Florida. Tom Brady and Spytek and Mark Davis were all at the national championship game last night, all of them allegedly in the house. So if you're McDaniel, your dilemma here is, do I take an OC job and then go kill it, whether it's in Tennessee or wherever, and then next year jump back in the coaching pool where there might be 20 vacancies? I kid, this year there are 10. Or do I immediately jump back in as a head coach? Again, a lot of that also, I think, deserves or requires some introspection. Like, do I need a year recalibrating? Do I need a year of introspection and looking back and trying to figure out what I did and didn't do right as the Dolphins head coach? Do I want an immediate head coaching job again? There are plenty of head coaches who will tell you that they are far better their second time than their first time. You learn a lot when you're taking a job and you've never done it. And that maybe a year off in between would be good for the reset and to figure out and to journal a little bit and to see what you could do to make yourself a better head coach. If you're good, your phone is going to ring. There's also and Jori, going back to your quarterback run game thing. Remember, when the Niners moved up and they passed on Mac Jones and they took Trey Lance, everybody said, hey, now Kyle Shanahan can add some special sauce to his tried and true offense. He now can add the element of the quarterback run game. He never really had that before. Now he can unlock it, and he can make that offense so much better and dangerous. Obviously, it never happened. Trey Lance got injured multiple times, often when Kyle Shanahan was trying to run him. Oh, by the way, there are other people who tell you that, hey, this system doesn't develop quarterbacks because everything is do as I say. It's timing. Here's your landmark. Throw the damn ball. This is the play. Run it. And that you're not teaching someone to play quarterback. You're teaching someone to follow directions. I think the truth is somewhere in the middle. The system works. The better the play caller, obviously, the better the system. I would love to see Mike McDaniel in Tennessee because I'm a big Cam Ward fan. And obviously, there's the McDaniel and Saleh connection from assistant bros there under Kyle. I think it would be fun. I don't know.
Okay. One more name I want to throw out at y'all, and it's not someone who has the same background with Saleh that Mike McDaniel has, but in terms of the former head coach, and so you know that you have less of a chance losing them. Would you guys like Cliff Kingsbury there as offensive coordinator based off what he's done with Jaden and others?
As OC,
I can see it
yes.
working.
Yeah, as OC.
Yes.
I mean, Saleh's the head coach.
I could totally.
I have some questions about Cliff as an OC because it seems to get stale as the season goes on. We saw that in Arizona, not necessarily Washington because Jaden was just on such a heater. But yeah, I can see that too. And yes, yeah, I would like that fit.
George, do you see
the fit better than Mike McDaniel, but based off what Mike's done previously from a schematic standpoint. But obviously, Mike could evolve, and then maybe I feel different.
Did you see Jori? Kyle Shanahan's comments about Clay Kubiak this week. So Clint, obviously, with the Seahawks, he's their OC. Clay, his other brother, is the OC in title, at least, with the 49ers. Everyone knows Kyle calls the plays, and he was asked, like, would you let him leave if he can get an OC job and he can call plays, which technically he should be able to do that. He was like, no, he's our OC. No. It's like he calls plays. No, he doesn't. He calls plays.
No.
We're not going to let him leave. But that's to your point. Like if I have somebody good, I don't want him out the building unless it's for a head coaching job.
So I'm glad you brought this up because I thought of this with multiple people this year, including Declan Doyle in Chicago. If everyone's like, how can I get the next Ben Johnson? And when I did the story on Declan earlier this season, everyone said that Declan is another Ben Johnson. Like people who had worked with both of them felt that way. And he's the offensive coordinator, but clearly everyone knows, like Kyle Shanahan, that Ben Johnson is calling the plays. So I asked a bunch of sources, most of whom thought that it wouldn't count as a promotion. And I actually ended up asking the league office about this because I'm like, I want clarity to understand this. And despite the fact that in our minds, it is a promotion for someone who has a coordinator role without play calling duties to go to a coordinator role with play calling duties, according to league rules in terms of what teams can and cannot block, it is not considered a promotion from coordinator unless you're going to head coach, and thus it can be blocked. So I'm not saying they should do it. And we see in Cincinnati, Bengals head coach Zach Taylor was allowing Dan Pitcher to interview for some positions, but that was something that he was allowing him to do. It wasn't something he had to do. And the reason I'd gotten confused in part, to go down memory lane for a bit, is because when I was at University of Texas, they hired a guy named Joe Wickline from Oklahoma State, and the rule had been in his Oklahoma State contract that if he got an offensive coordinator role with play calling duties, it would not be considered a lateral move from his OC job at Oklahoma State, and thus he could get out of his contract and whatever it was in terms of still getting the money. And then the other guy on staff ended up admitting at a press conference that he was calling the plays, and Oklahoma State sued Joe Wickline. And I had to report on this when I was a college reporter of like, hey, no, this is not something you're actually doing. And it wouldn't surprise me if that is a factor in why the league doesn't want to get involved in this, because even if it is in theory a promotion, well, what do you do if, hey, Joe Witt was the defensive coordinator with play calling opportunities this year for the Commanders, and then in the middle of the year wasn't working anymore, so Dan Quinn took it back, or in Detroit we saw Dan Campbell take it back. I think that's one of the reasons they don't do it, but I don't personally agree with it in terms of allowing your best football minds to be able to get the best opportunities.
Real quick, they can call it a promotion if you add the assistant head coach title, right?
I was told
no,
only
isn't that a promotion if I make you OC and assistant head coach?
It's a good question. My understanding is in terms of them having to let you out of their contract, and maybe it's just because you can slap assistant head coach on them yourself. Maybe that's the caveat there. But in terms of them being unable to block, my understanding is if you're a coordinator, the only thing that they cannot block is a head coach. That's what the league told me.
Okay. Well, he can't block Jeff Hafley because he is now out as DC in Green Bay and in as head coach in Miami. What do you think, Frank Schwab?
I think that it was as good of a hire as the Dolphins could have made. Like that Dolphins job is bad, and it's going to be for a couple of years. So Hafley has a lot of respect. And I've talked about this before in the A block. The synergy between him and Sully, their new GM, Sully and Half. I did like that Joe Shad tweeted out earlier. I like the synergy there. I like those guys coming in as a tandem. And you get the feeling like because they come in as a tandem, they might be given a little bit of patience that you're not, there's no power struggle there necessarily. There's no one of them's on the hot seat. One of them's not. So I do like the fit there. I don't think the Dolphins were going to do much better. I know a lot of Dolphins fans are like, oh, this is it. Like this is all we could do. Yeah, that's all you could do. Look at your roster. Look at your quarterback situation. Look at your cap situation. It ain't good. You're going to lose for a couple of years here. So I thought it was a perfectly reasonable hire. And I do like the fact that even though it wasn't college and he didn't have the best record in the world, Jeff Hafley does have head coaching experience at Boston College. Yes. I do like that part of it too.
Jori?
Yeah, and to me, the Sirens of New York also apparently like Jeff Hafley getting this with head coaching experience. But I do think that, to me, the biggest thing I thought when they hired another Green Bay is if they're thinking Green Bay at GM and they're thinking Green Bay at head coach, I think signs increasingly point to Green Bay at quarterback. And so we all know that Tua Tagovailoa was benched. And then after the season, Mike McDaniel, before he was fired, said that there was going to be an open competition at quarterback in 2026. And then very interesting this week, the Dolphins posted a 15-minute interview between John Eric Sullivan, their new general manager, with one of their team reporters. And in that interview, they talk about all sorts of things with the roster, about the importance of building a team starting with the quarterback. And then when they talked about the pieces they had in place as the core to build, and they mentioned Jalen Waddle, they mentioned the center, Aaron Brewer, their left tackle. They mentioned the Jordan Brooks at linebacker, and Tua Tagovailoa, actually, and Tyreek Hill were nowhere to be found on that list. So I think that even if I imagine the in-house reporter was told, don't directly ask about Tua, if that was the case, or if the fact that it didn't come up in 15 minutes of an interview, when that's clearly the most important question, I think it's pretty telling that that is not the plan, or that I should say that Tua Tagovailoa is not the Dolphins' starting plan at quarterback, dead money or not. And so if you look at it, Malik Willis, I have a lot of sources around the league telling me that what he did as the backup to Jordan Love in Green Bay this year, I think it was like completing 85% of his passes. He had a few touchdowns, no interceptions. He had 2 more on the ground game. He did have some fumbles, but he's considered to be like that Daniel Jones of this year. It was the Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones, where a guy who didn't make it at his first spot, but then grew in the background, looked really good, and all of a sudden someone wants to give him a deal. So the same way we saw Daniel Jones get $13 million from the Colts last year, I have sources who think it's going to be about $15 million and maybe even a multi-year deal, even if it's front-loaded in terms of guarantees for Malik Willis on the free agent market this year. And I think Miami makes perfect sense. The Packers are very big into letting guys develop for a couple years and then letting them start. And you have a GM and a head coach in Sullivan and in Hafley who just watched Malik Willis develop, play really well against teams like the Baltimore Ravens this year. So they'll have to decide cap-wise what they do if they've got Tua's cap hit and they've got Malik Willis's potentially like $15 million, at least in salary, even if not in cap. But I do think that if you're connecting dots, as long as the OC hire doesn't make this illogical, this is by far the most logical move for the Dolphins to bring in Malik Willis at quarterback.
Yeah, I agree. Malik Willis is going to be highly sought after. Miami makes the most sense here with these 2 pieces already in place, or you can play the game as well. Like, what if the Titans had developed Malik Willis and actually kept him on the bench and actually brought him along slowly? Because nobody thought that the kid had a liberty, regardless of where he started his college career, but the kid had a liberty would be ready to play immediately. Just what if they had brought him along slowly, and then if they had the number 1 overall pick, they could have taken Travis Hunter a year ago. They wouldn't need a quarterback. They wouldn't need Cam Ward. Cam Ward would have gone 2 overall. Like the sliding doors, the N-if-L, as my friend Dave Damashek used to call it, the N-if-L. I got one for you. What if Tom Brady walked away last night from Hard Rock Stadium saying, Fernando Mendoza, he's a good player, good story, but maybe I want Malik Willis at number 1 overall, and the Raiders can take something else. I'm just saying, what if they, want Malik Willis and go somewhere else at number 1? If, I don't think that's going to happen. But coming up next, what did you think of that college football national championship last night? Because in terms of like crazy American sports stories, I don't know that you're going to find one that's any better. Inside Coverage continues. It's Inside Coverage on Yahoo. Yes, we are an NFL show. However, as we get towards the offseason and the NFL and college football worlds kind of come together as we march towards the draft in Pittsburgh, we will talk more and more college football, or at least our impressions of the players coming from college. And last night, I thought was pretty cool. Indiana wins the national championship, beats Miami in Miami, 27-21. And the transformation of the Indiana program can't be overstated. We live in a hyperbolic world. Every morning you turn on the TV and people are screaming and yelling that everything is the best or the worst they've ever seen when it comes to sports. I don't know that you're going to find a better story than Indiana football. They are, by most measures, the worst program in the history of major power football, major conference power football. They are. This season, actually, forget about it. Even at 16-0, they are nearly 200 games under 500 as an institution playing the game of American football since they first started playing over 130 years ago. That is how bad they have been. When Curt Cignetti showed up a couple of years ago, they're coming off a 3-win season. In the last 2 years, they have 27 wins and a national championship with a quarterback who a couple of years ago was telling people at Berkeley, I don't know about the NFL. I really don't want to be a third-string quarterback. Maybe I'll just focus on finance and real estate. And that's what he cared about. He cared about his LinkedIn page, not his Instagram page. And they won. And they did so with discipline and with dominance. It is, Jori, you go first if you want to. In my opinion, the greatest American comeback story in my lifetime. Like, I don't know what is cooler than the kid from Miami that Miami didn't want bringing back the worst program in college football and beating Miami in Miami.
Yeah, I mean, there's the quarterback element that's awesome, and just all the pictures of Fernando Mendoza's dad playing with Mario Cristobal in high school, I think were the pictures they were showing during the broadcast.
Columbus High.
So there were all sorts of connections, but I also think there's the element of the coach and just like, he was like, oh yeah, I was on Saban's staff and I wasn't getting my opportunities. So I'm like, fine, I'll just go to D2 if I'm not going to get it in D1. And I'm just going to go to James Madison and make it to the FCS championship with Ben DiNucci, who was on the Denver Broncos yet again after the Bo Nix injury. I'm gonna do that. And so I don't know. I do think it's such a great story of like, if you can't find it in one route, there's always another route. And I know that like when we were applying to college, my siblings and I'm back with my advice, get excited. My parents would always tell us it doesn't matter where you go, it matters what you do when you get there. And I think that Curt Cignetti is just, I mean, both he and Fernando Mendoza are just such great examples of that, of like, if you do it right and if you succeed and if you are talented, people are going to notice no matter where you do it. And it's funny because on one hand, I get that we often say that in the NFL, teams ruin quarterbacks and quarterbacks go to the wrong place. But I do think there's some element of we all have agency in this. And so I'm not saying our context doesn't matter, but I think these two guys are great examples of the fact that we shouldn't let our context define us. And we do have the ability to elevate our surroundings.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I as the Big Ten guy among us three, I will tell you that for all my life growing up watching Big Ten football, Indiana was a team you're like, okay, good. Thank goodness we play Indiana this week before we got to go to Ohio State next week because we're going to get a win there. Actually, just schedule that for homecoming because Indiana's got no chance to beat us. Except for like when Antoine Randall L was there and they were kind of exciting a little bit and going like, I think 6-6. Like they were terrible. Like it was a joke. I've been to Indiana's football stadium once, and it was a long time ago. I'll grant you that, but it was like, really, this is a Big Ten stadium, really? But they didn't care. They had a basketball program. That's what they care about there. So yes, for them to turn it around and go 16-0. Trust me, I've had many conversations with my college buddies about Indiana's doing this. Really, Indiana? It's a great story. It's unbelievable. The one story I will put up for debate as far as the greatest American sports story goes. the 1999 Rams were awesome. Like when you consider Kurt
Yes.
Warner, like the bagging groceries, and he goes down in the preseason. And I get to use this line for the second time this week of Dick Vermeil after Trent Green gets hurt in the preseason. Dick Vermeil crying because Trent Green is hurt for the year, saying, "We will rally around Kurt Warner and we will play good football." And that just lives on forever. And it's not like just they lost their starting quarterback, but the Rams were absolutely garbage at that point in their history and never won a Super Bowl, I believe, at that point. So I would put the 1999
But they had gone out and they
Rams
spent
there,
money
but-
on Trent Green, right? Like, this is going to be the guy.
Just had done it.
Yes.
And Kurt Warner, who nobody had ever heard of. Nobody had ever heard of Kurt Warner, becomes NFL MVP, Super Bowl MVP, make movies about him later. But this is up there. I mean, Indiana football going 16-0, winning a national championship. Like, what world are we living in right now?
There's also Miracle on Ice, like Placid. There's plenty of great stories. So we have recency bias. We live in the here and now. It is just so cool. Curt Cignetti, day one, saying, "Google me," and just go back and watch the presser, like the body language. He's like leaning into the mic. Google me. Like you just came from James Madison. By the way, my brother and his wonderful wife. They went to James Madison. I almost went to James Madison. I'm a native Virginian. I love JMU, and now they're up to the big time. And yay JMU! But like he's there at JMU, and then he goes to Indiana. He takes all his guys. Google me. Okay, guess what? You backed it up, and it was fantastic. And listen, I keep hearing about they have no 5 stars. They had no 4 stars. They had no 3 stars. Since when do we? It's a very sports thing to stand on what people thought of you in high school. Like, none of us are what we were our senior year in high school. Yet only in sports do we judge people's accomplishments. Well, I don't know. In high school, we never really thought they were going to be that guy. They were 18 years old. They were 17 years old. And it's not just Mendoza. It's a roster full of, not rejects, but people that were not viewed as highly as others who banded together and, again, with discipline and domination, won a national championship. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. Miami has 11 players in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Indiana has 1. Miami brought out Michael Irvin, friend of the program, for the coin toss yesterday. Indiana brought out not Antoine Randall, but Adewale Ogunleye, the former Bear defensive lineman. Wale, who's a heck of a damn good player. But yeah, Wale is out there with Michael Irvin at the coin toss. Since everyone is wondering, yes, Natalie Cignetti. What is this,
sorry.
Madison?
Let me explain this. I asked the producers to cue it up.
Okay.
Curt Cignetti's daughter posted this tweet yesterday, and I guess he had previously, I don't know if we can show the other part of the tweet where it was quote tweeted.
Okay.
In 2019, she had tweeted after the James Madison championship game, he won his first D1 playoff game, scored 66 points, improved to 12-1, and she had texted her dad then, "Are you happy?" And he said no. And so then this tweet of hers resurfaces, starts going viral, and she goes, since everyone is wondering, she texted her dad, "Are you happy now?" And he said yes with all of the red exclamation marks. So I thought amazing. It was just great that she said it's just fun when you have the receipts from a time, and you're going back to like a what we were in high school question. I think it's fun when you have the receipts from a time where, like, if you told yourself then what you were going to be doing in a few years, like, never forget that.
Yeah, it's cool. I thought that was one of those instances in which she had texted her father and he responded accidentally on Twitter. Like, you text in one form, you get a response. Because my dad does that. I will text my dad and he will respond with an email. I'm like, what? Like, what? What are we doing here? That's not what that was, to be clear. Right? Right. Okay, good. Let's move on. Let's do one more thing before we go. Frank, go ahead.
I'm glad you brought up great American sports stories, because I think we're underselling a potential unbelievable story. And I'm not even trying to be hyperbolic there. Jarrett Stidham is going to start for the Denver Broncos on Sunday. And I just keep thinking this week about the opportunity he has. 2 wins, Jarrett Stidham becomes immortal. And I'm not overstating that. We remember every single quarterback who wins the Super Bowl, whether it's Trent Dilfer or Jeff Hostetler or whoever it is. There's a lot of great quarterbacks who have played through NFL history, and a lot of them have been forgotten because they didn't make or win a Super Bowl. Jarrett Stidham if he can take over and lead his team to a Super Bowl 2 wins from now, and that's not impossible given this defense, given his head coach, and given the fact that Jarrett Stidham can play. He's shown some things on film, whether it be the preseason or his 4 NFL starts. But this situation is so unprecedented. A lot of superlatives coming out this week. First quarterback to make his first start of the season in the conference championship game since Roger Staubach in 1972. Roger Staubach, obviously a Hall of Famer, got hurt preseason that year. Then he didn't start all season because Craig Morton took over. They went 10-4 with him. But in the divisional round, Staubach comes off the bench, leads a comeback. Tom Landry goes with him in the conference championship game. Jarrett Stidham, the first quarterback since Davis Webb, the only other quarterback to make a start in the playoffs without throwing a pass in a regular season. This is just storybook level type of stuff if he can get it done. And honestly, I'm not counting against him. I'm not counting against the Broncos and their defense and Sean Payton. I think this is going to be a really, really interesting game on Sunday. And if somehow Jarrett Stidham can make a Super Bowl and win a Super Bowl, it would be up there with the Kurt Warner story and everything like that. I really think we're underselling it now, so I'm trying to get it out there now. Keep an eye on this Jarrett Stidham story, because if he could pull this off, they'll be making movies about him someday.
So we haven't gotten to Thursday yet, but I said it. I was on CNN last night for a second on TV. I said it there. I think Denver's going to win the game. Now, as for
I'm
2 weeks from now, I don't know.
Too, Andrew. I can't lie.
I think Denver's going to win.
They're going to rally so hard around him
Sunday.
And Peyton.
We're going to
I
rally
said it
around
Monday.
Jarrett
I'm going to say it again
Stidham.
because I got to say it again.
Confidence.
Sean Payton, I think, Sean Payton is reveling in this. I think Sean Payton is like, bring it on. I didn't want to lose Bo Nix because I love Bo Nix, but I could take, if I could do this, okay. All right, let me show the world that I can do this for Jarrett Stidham.
Jori, what do you got?
Yeah, Joe Burrow tweeted a couple days ago, and he tweeted for the first time in about 2 years, and he said, and I quote, "The amount of people that don't understand what a catch is in the rule book flabbergasts me. And it's not the officials. The 2 plays yesterday were not difficult calls, and they got them both right." I think it was just refreshing to see someone tweet that the officials did something right. And I think we need to know that. I'm a big believer in, like, you need to have positive reinforcement when something goes right, not just call people out when they do something wrong, whether or not you agree with it. I thought it was interesting. I do think Joe Burrow agrees with it. I don't think he would get out of his tweeting darkness to tweet something he didn't. But I think the reality is that as much as we want it to be cut and dry what was right or wrong with these officials, and you could argue of, hey, if they were officiating it one way earlier in the game in terms of how aggressive they were letting guys be, they should continue. This is not so cut and dry on all of these rules, particularly with some of these things that you can't see. So I think Joe Burrow was being a little bit nuanced and reasoned in a conversation around officiating that so rarely is that.
I also find it interesting that quarterback, offensive player, is evidently saying that they got it right when they gave the ball to defensive player in Denver, as opposed to wide receiver Brandon Cooks. On the flip side of that, I'm in my car today listening to Sirius XM NFL Radio, and friend of the program, Jim Miller, former Bears and Steelers quarterback, is losing his mind. And I say that respectfully. It's as angry as I've ever heard Jim on the radio, raising his voice noticeably that they got it wrong. And how on earth can we expect these games to be played in the postseason like this and fair outcomes be determined if they are getting such an obvious call wrong? And he was adamant. My one more thing comes from Robert Kraft, the Patriots owner. His team is heading back to the AFC Championship game. And he said out loud today on the radio in Boston something that behind the scenes people have been saying for a while now. Take a listen.
I want to tell you guys, though, we're going to push like the Dickens now to make international more important with us. Every team will go to 18-2, and eliminate one of the preseason games. And every team every year will play one game overseas. And part of the reason is so we can continue to grow the cap and keep our labor happy, because we're sort of getting near the top here, with the coverage. 93 of the top 100 programs on television are NFL games. Right. Think about that. It's really amazing. And you look at the size of our crowds. versus the other sports. And it's really, and we had that Amazon game on Thursday a couple of weeks ago. 31 million people streamed. And so as long as we can keep growing revenue, we can keep long-term labor peace.
Okay, so yeah, behind the scenes, people have been saying this for a little bit now, and Roger Goodell has implied a lot of what Robert Kraft said more definitively there in interviews over the past year. There's going to be a new CBA in 2029, and we're moving in that direction. But he said it. It's going to be it's what the league wants is an 18-game season, a 2-game preseason, and at 9:30 Eastern time every Sunday, there to be an international game. So you have 16 of them. So maybe not every Sunday, but 16 of them. All 32 teams play overseas once a year. There's your 16 games, and that is a new standalone package, likely to a streamer, but who knows what the world looks like in the media landscape in 2029. Jori, I saw you nodding your head. You've been hearing the exact same thing. I guess it'll make a headline now because Robert Kraft said it, but yeah.
Yeah, the NFL has slowly been moving towards saying all of this aloud, and they'd say one part at one place of Roger Goodell would just kind of mention an element of the 18 games in an interview with, who was at McAfee before the draft that one year. And then another time they'd be like, oh, well, preseason, that's how we'll make room for it, as if the same people play in the preseason, much less to the same level of difficulty. As we all know, like the real stars of the game and the starters in the game play so little in the preseason that this is not actually the same toll on their body. But I think Robert Kraft also tipped us off to what the NFL's bargaining stance is going to be, which is that if you're talking to the NFLPA and they represent, let's say 3,000 players, well, maybe for 100 to 150 players, this is not going to be a net win for them because they're already making the money. They're going to have careers. They're going to make it. But for the overwhelming bulk of the constituents, the guys who are in the NFL 3 years, if they're lucky, to be able to get another paycheck and have that money on the salary cap and have more guys on the roster is something that would be compelling. I'm not trying to be pro NFL as opposed to pro player here, but I'm saying this is the argument that Robert Kraft is saying because he is hearing it in NFL meetings with other owners and with Roger Goodell. And this is what they're going to try and continue to say publicly, because then the overwhelming bulk of the PA membership is going to be like, oh yeah, well, we do want more money and more games because we don't have much of a career lifespan. The problem the NFLPA has always had and will always have is that they have such a large constituency that does not have the same goals because they're in such different stages of their career, as opposed to, for example, ownership, where you could say from an NFL owner standpoint, there's 31, 32 of them, and they do just want to make more money. So it's a really big challenge.
Just two things real quick. The NFL has to be careful. One of the reasons the NFL is so wildly popular with the 93 out of 100 top television shows this year is scarcity. It's not the NBA. It's not Major League Baseball. You don't need to have following your team all year doesn't become a part-time job. You're keeping adding. Oh, let's do Christmas. Let's do international every morning. Let's do the that's not the path you think it is, NFL. And by the way, my second thing, I think I said before my one more thing that Davis Webb was the quarterback who played in the playoffs without taking a snap in the regular season. Joe Webb, the 2012 Vikings, obviously Davis Webb on my mind because the coaching searches and wires get crossed. But yes, Joe Webb, the 2012 Vikings, started a playoff game without throwing a pass in the regular season.
Who was a core special teams player, but also a quarterback in college, and the third quarterback, I believe, on the depth chart, or maybe second that year, regardless. And they went, hey, Joe, guess what? You're actually playing quarterback this week. Go out there, knock yourself out, which I believe he might have actually gotten knocked out, if I recall correctly. Last thing, real quick, on this extra game here and everyone playing internationally. I'm with you, Frank. I think the 9:30 Eastern time window has become a little bit of an annoyance as opposed to a novelty for your domestic audience. But the most important thing is the international audience here. Someone is going to pay, people think, a large amount of money, a massive amount of money for that 9:30 Eastern time window. And the most important thing is how many countries it can get into. How big is your international audience? And when the standalone games on Black Friday or Christmas are getting into 200 countries because of the power of the international streamers. That's all that matters. That's 200 countries where you can have kids watch and fall in love with American football. Those kids want to buy jerseys. Those kids want to stream. Those kids go on Instagram and on TikTok. Those kids play flag football. Those kids grow up to be NFL fans. The 9:30 Eastern time window, the 32 teams overseas every year, is about growing the international audience and about the next generation of fan, even if it means annoying some of your fans that, I don't know, want to go to church or go to their kids' soccer game on Sunday morning at 9:30 Eastern time every week and not remember to set their fantasy team. For Frank Schwab and for Jori Epstein, my name is Andrew Siciliano. Eric Armstead, Walter Payton Man of the Year, and Jacksonville Jaguar joins us on Wednesday's show. We hope you do as well. So long.